because they're white, because they're behind a lot of the problems in this country today. And I don't like the direction our country's taking. And I remember my son coming home, this is when we lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and saying, I never knew Chase was black. And I said, Christopher, because that's how I raised you. Because he was being picked on in school that day. And I said, that's how I raised him. And I'm starting to see in this country that it's beginning to be all about the color of your skin, and if you're a Democrat, well then you're for the black community. If you're a Republican, you're not for the black community. And that's not how I grew up, and that's not how I raised my children. And I'm here because I want to try and make a difference. I want us to get back to what Martin Luther King was talking about and start judging people by their character and not by the color of their skin. That we need to start coming together as a country, everybody, black, white, brown, purple, green, whatever. And I want to see that country again. And I think that was some of the hope that a lot of people had 2 years ago. And I'm really troubled by what I'm seeing.
No, actually, I wanted to add one thing too. One of the encouraging things that I do want to say, going back to, again, the diversity in the room and stuff, is that I love when there's a lot of white folks at one of our events. Whether it's all blacks, all whites, or it's a mixed, it doesn't matter, especially with something like this. Because one thing that, you guys can all take away from this experience is you have to be proud of your history. Not everybody here probably knew some of the history that was here of what you fought for and who we are as Black History Month. And as we're going through Black History Month, it's not just black history, it's black and white history, it's American history, and it made up of all of us. And when she was talking about the white guilt, that has to go. That is another form of slavery, of mental slavery that people have. Oh, I can't say that because I'm white. When Eric Holder became Attorney General, remember he said, what was it? He said, now we can start having real dialogue about black and white relations and dialogue. And I had to stop and think and go, hold on. One of the main reasons I became conservative is because we could have open dialogue with other conservatives about, black issues. Versus when others, that's not politically correct to say that. Oh, you can't say that. I'm like, well, how can I have a real discussion about what's causing the plight in the black community if I'm not able to say that social programs are a huge part of that and the way that they're implemented, right? That's a real conversation. I can talk to, when I know that I am in a room full of conservatives or my conservative friends, I know I can say whatever I want. And they know that they can say whatever they want. There's no biting your tongue. There's no, can I say that around Ayesha? No, because we're just people, and we all have the same type of, and we have to open that up, and that goes for both sides. That goes for white Americans as well. You have to be more proud of who you are, what the history of. This is amazing history. Be proud of it. Stand up, shout out. You have people for the last, we'll say 40 years, have been calling you a racist, and that you're not for black people, and yet you're still standing up, fighting for black folks, civil rights, abortion, as you're being spit on in your face. That's something to be proud of. If you really didn't want and really didn't believe in the equality of people and human beings, then you just would have sat down and shut up and sat in a corner and been like, whatever, I don't care, great, slavery, bring it back, I get cheaper clothes. But you didn't. There's a sense of pride that you have to have there. And say, you know what? Hold on. I have a great and rich history, and you should be proud of that. So whatever purpose that God has for who's here, He has a purpose, a seed, something for you to be here for, and you can take that up with God, So, Sam.
So I just want to, I thought Ayesha brought up a good point there when she said it'd be nice to get a room where there are some dissenting views, because America is a very diverse country. And I'm getting the sense that everybody in this room is kind of the same view, which is good. But I wanted to ask, I don't know if a dissenting view, but a question that might be perceived that way. So, as it mentions in the beginning of the film there, that from a historical perspective, this country was created as a democracy, but it's also a republic. So we're ruled by a majority, but as a republic, every individual that's a citizen of this country has the same rights as the majority does, whether that minority happens to represent 2% or 49% of what this country is. So from the film that the video that we watched, it certainly seemed like it was an anti-democratic type of bent to it, as far as the Democratic Party. And one of the planks that were up there when you started getting into talking about how Democrats were on the wrong side of certain things, which I agree they have been on abortion and certain issues. One of the things that brought up though is that 80% of those people, 80% of the people in this country are in favor of prayer in schools. I happen to be in favor of that too, because I think from a moral perspective it would help our students. However, though, my question is, based upon democracy and being a republic, is then who decides what prayer that we have in school? So, if somebody is Jewish, or somebody is Muslim, or somebody is an atheist, and the prayer happens to be in Our Father, or even from a Christian perspective, if the majority is Catholic, and they decide the prayer is going to be a Hail Mary, now you have division within the Christian society. So, my question is then, the film is, was it intended to be more toward discussing Black history, or more of an anti-democratic type of message to it as well too? Because I certainly got the anti-democratic bent to the video as well. And some of the things, like it says, the school paraphrase, they could, as a Democrat, you can say, hey, look, it's also a republic, so who is actually going to decide what prayer that we're going to say in school, since everybody should have the right to, not to have my child say a prayer to whoever happens to be the majority is in that particular time, because if the majority is making all the rules and forcing them down upon the people who are in the minority, that's tyranny. So, how does that, stack up? And that's my question. I want to take a good dissenting question, because I thought Ayesha made a great point, that if we could have a debate back and forth and things that people might say, hey, look, I don't quite agree with that. So.
Tommy said he definitely wants to take that question, so.
You don't want to say that?
What? Sure. That's a great question. When it comes to prayer in schools, I guess you'd have to, not necessarily who's in power, but if you're in a school and most of the people in that school or you're in that school district are Christian or Muslim or whatever, and they decide that's the prayer, that's your right to do that, But you also have you have the silent prayer. They want to even take that away. They want to take all aspects of it. If you have, there's ways that we can divide that up and say, what, hey, my child is Jewish. I don't want to do that prayer. Or, they're Muslim. We want to say a prayer to Allah. Okay, well, you can have those groups split up. You can have that segregation of those groups. There's other ways. We haven't even pondered that, I think, as much, because now that we are such a diverse group of, in America, things are getting more and more diverse. Taking it totally away, I don't think is the answer. There's other ways, but we don't even dive into that question. Well, how do you do that? But again, if you have a majority of people are Christian in a school, well, you can take your kid out. If you had school vouchers, school choice, you'd be able to stick your kid in a Muslim school, in a Jewish school, in a Christian school, because I would have that right. But right now, we don't even have that. We don't have the right to put our kids in whatever school that we want to put them in, because the government tells us that. So, there's so many different ways that I think that we would be able to tackle that if we were able to bring that to the forefront of part of the discussion, is how to address that.
Okay. Now, I have here the platform of the Democrat and Republican parties. I think it's a 124-year history. And one of the reasons for the First Amendment was because we didn't want to go back to England, where people were forced to observe, some form of religion. So therefore, they put in the Constitution that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion, nor abridging the free exercise thereof. So, which only means that, okay, the government can't tell me what religious observance to participate in, and at the same time, you know, I don't have the right to force the government to tell you to shut up. So, it's just at the time, most people were Christians, so we said Christian prayers in school. Now, if you'd had a Muslim or somebody else, they would have been free to go over and make their prayers. I mean, they have a right to religious freedom. They just don't have a right to force me to participate in it. So in 1972, Republicans put in their platform, by the way, the Democrats didn't even mention it. It said, we affirm our view that voluntary prayer should be freely permitted in public places, particularly by school children while attending public schools, providing that such prayers are not prepared or prescribed by the state or any of its political subdivisions, and that no person's participation is coerced, thus preserving the traditional separation of church and state. This is 1972. I mean, Jefferson's letter was like considered a constitution already, even though separation of church and state doesn't appear in the Constitution. But the thing is, we didn't want to have a forceful prayer, and Congress don't have the right to force you to pray or not to pray. But today, we got it all turned around. We're saying that you have no right to pray in school, so they want to remove the 10 Commandments, they want to remove everything, you know, and so now we have all this chaos. And I work in the jail, I'm a chaplain at the jail, and we have a jail full of people who have no idea. The only thing they know about is that when they come to jail, they want a Bible from the chaplain. But they have no idea what's in that Bible. So that's telling me that we have people who were prevented from exercising their religious observance in school. So therefore, they ended up committing crimes. Now that they come to jail, they remember what grandma or mama told them. So now they want the chaplain to come explain the Bible to them. Which I have no problem with doing, but we're talking about people who are 40, 50 years old in jail.
So my question part to that, though, is I agree with that. If education comes from
Yes.
tax dollars, and the government cannot either sponsor or say you can't, either one, then if they have not gotten that background from the Bible, then shouldn't that come from the home and not the school?
This is the whole point. This is the whole point.
What about the family?
Well, this is the whole point. This is why the framers of the Constitution, people were already teaching their kids at home. It's just when their kids went to school, they were not to be prohibited from carrying on their religious observance while in the public institution. This is the problem we have today. We still pray at home, but you just can't pray in the school library or stuff like that. So no one's saying you have to be a Christian. But the Constitution clearly said that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And in 1872, Joseph Story, he wrote an opinion on that law. He said this was not an opinion that would restrict Mohammedanism or Judaism. This was an amendment that would squash the competition between Christian denominations.
Right.
Because Christians wanted to come in, Presbyterian, Baptist, and take over certain things in the school. So that was prohibiting Congress from doing so, not the individual freedoms. Was that
And-
good?
Well, no, and in that, you know, just like, you know, you were saying, or what he was saying is, I mean, that brings it all the way back to not prohibiting you from being able in school. You know, if you're having school prayer, I mean, to be completely honest, if you had a Muslim student who wanted to go to school, they have to pray 5 times a day. They're allowed to go pray their 5 times a day. They get to do that. They're not prohibited from doing that because that's part of their religion. But everybody else is. As a Christian, at the beginning, right, when we start our day, we pray without ceasing day and night. You start at the beginning of the day. There might be times, you know, when you want to pray. Start your day, have a moment of silence. You can pray to whoever you want to pray. But why not if you had a group, if you have a class, you know, there's 10 students, 2 of them are Christian, 5 of them are Muslim, and 3 of them are Jewish, and then you have someone who's Baha'i, who's all alone. There should be nothing saying that those kids can't congregate together, pray together, take their 1 minute together, pray, and then come back together again and start your day off. But what happens is they prohibit us from carrying on from what's from school into the schools unless, of course, you're some kind of minority where it's going to be seen. I don't know. I don't know why. Like I said, I know several Muslim students. They're not prohibited from praying. But as a Christian, I was like, oh, if I even mention it, we have the once a year gather around the flagpole. That's what we get. So I think that's where, like I said, the major problem comes in. If we have to find a way to squash that particular argument, and then we can find ways that say, okay, everyone has the right to pray as they see fit. Of course, without disrupting classes and things like that. You can't go out every 5 minutes and, sit, but there should be a way to be able to do that. And I think that if we started having a serious conversation about that, they would find an amicable way. But that's not really what the problem is. The problem is we are living in a more and more anti-Christian society that wants to stifle the name of Jesus Christ, and they will do anything that they can in order to do that.
Just making one comment. Now, I was in high school in the late 50s at East Ridge, and we said a student prayer every morning. We stood at the Pledge of Allegiance, and it was not an offensive prayer. We acknowledged God, so we didn't say Jesus, we didn't say Allah. We acknowledged our God, our families, and our country.